Hello friends, this is Huda from Aligarh. I served this university for 12 years. Then I joined various coaching institutes. Currently, I am in Bansal classes. I gave 19th rank ever got by any student in UP, Bhunesh Kumar. He is now in Maulana Azad. So let's begin with, my name is Huda. Let's begin with a very small topic today, which I'm trying to make you understand. And the topic is bone. What exactly we mean by bone? We will study about the structure and about the physiology of the bone, taking into account all the hormones that are given in NCERT for the medical students. So let us begin. A bone is a rigid connective tissue, all you know, it's a mesodermal connective tissue. It's a mesodermal connective tissue. It is formed from mesoderm. And bone, if you look at along bones, you will find that the wall of the bone, if you go for the structural analysis of the bone, you will find that this wall from outside to inside, outside is basically the fibrous connective tissue present outside, what is called as periosteum. Here, the periosteum inside, from outside to inside, you find that the cells lining this, they are called osteoblast. So osteoblast is the bone forming cells present beneath the periosteum, which is actually the connective tissue, white fibrous connective tissue present outside the bone. If you look in the inside, you will find that this osteoblast now, it forms cells as well as it secretes the matrix. So actually the osteoblast forms the osteocytes, that is called the bone cells, and it also secretes the matrix. Matrix here will mean the ground substance present inside the wall of the bone. Never get mistaken, it is actually the wall which is being shown here. The periosteum is the outer fibrous connective tissue, and inside the fibrous connective tissue, this osteoblast cells, bone forming cells are there, and then osteocytes and then matrix. These osteocytes, which are basically formed by the osteoblast, they basically gets arranged in the concentric lamellae forms. Concentric and ring-shaped structures are formed here. You see, the inside is the matrix. What is matrix? The matrix is basically made up of proteins. Bone contains a special protein called osine. So osine protein is there, which makes the matrix of the bone. Besides, this is the organic substance present inside the matrix. The matrix are basically laid in layers, layer upon layer inside. We are showing just one kind of this concentric lamellae inside. So many here which are present inside this concentric lamellae, ring-shaped structures are formed here. Then this matrix also contains, the 70% part of the matrix is basically the inorganic substance. And these inorganic substances are later on added to the bones, and this is calcium and phosphate, what is called as hydroxyapatite. Calcium hydroxyapatite. If you look at the formula, this is Ca10PO46 and OH2 whole 2. This is hydroxyapatite. Basically, it constitutes 70% of the bone. 70% part of the bone is the mineral. Now, a bone without this inorganic substance is termed as basically the osteocytes, including this protein. We call this part as osteoid. A term, osteoids is here. Osteoid is the term given for decalcified, and without the minerals present inside. So when the mineral is not there, it is called osteoids. Now inside the bone wall, you find the inside of this towards this cavity, which is called marrow cavity. This is marrow cavity. The marrow cavity contains yellow bone marrow here in the long bones part, which is called the shaft of the bone, sometimes also called diaphysis. The hard bone here is diaphysis. The shaft of the bone is called diaphysis. In diaphysis, here we are showing that outside to inside, or you go from inside to outside, you find that again here is the osteoblast. Again, the osteoblasts are there. So osteoblast lining on both the sides of the wall, facing the marrow cavity here. And here is again the fibrous connective tissue towards the marrow cavity. We call it endosteum. This part is called endosteum. So a bone contains this periosteum, this hard bone part contains periosteum on the outside, then osteoblast, the bone forming cell, which forms the osteocyte. These are the osteocytes. Osteocytes are there. The osteocytes, as you can see, inside the matrix, they basically form a small canaliculi. It's like connection between individual cells here. They remain connected with each other, as well as with the concentric, as well as the matrix part. So they are connected with each other. This is called canaliculi. Canaliculi part. Now, you find that in the long bones, if you consider the thickness of the wall, here you find that inside the thickness of the wall, the nerve fiber and blood vessels goes inside through this middle of the concentric lamellae, and this middle of the concentric lamellae contains a canal which is called Haversian canal. This Haversian canal lodges Haversian canal, and this Haversian canal lodges blood vessels, nerve fibers, etc. So you find in the longitudinal section of the wall, you can find here is, if you consider the thickness, for example, if this is the thickness of the wall, you find this the longitudinal canal is there, what is called the Haversian canal. You sometimes also find here the transverse canal present, which is called Walkman canal. So in the thickness of the bone, these canals are present for blood vessels and nerve fibers. So it's Walkman canal and Haversian canal. Now, the concentric lamellae with the osteocytes around it, with the Haversian canal, this part is termed as what? Osteon. So you have two terms. One is osteon and one is osteoid. Let us make clear difference here. The matrix of the bone, which contains only protein, then it is called osteoids. This is without this inorganic matter. Now, if you consider the Haversian canal along with the concentric lamellae, then the term is osteon. So we understand that bone contains osin protein, which is around 30%, and 70% part of the bone is basically the hydroxyapatite. This is here. We consider this, and here inside the marrow cavity we have the marrow, we have this yellow bone marrow present inside. This yellow bone marrow forms stores, reticular tissue and adipose tissue, and in emergency condition it does form the RBC and WBC. Here, if you consider the end of the bones, which is generally soft, spongy, cancellous, so here the end of the bone is, you have this spongy bone, also called cancellous, that is cancellous bone. So here you have cancellous bone or a spongy bone, soft bone and hard bone. Hard bone structure we have seen. Now what exactly is the spongy bone? You can find that in a spongy bone, the Haversian canal and this concentric lamellae is absent. This is characteristically absent here in the spongy bone. So what exactly is the bar-like structures? No, osteocytes are present, bar-like structures are there. So let us magnify it. Here is a bar-like structures, what is called as trabeculae. And inside the trabeculae, the yellow bone marrow is present. Red bone marrow, sorry. This is red bone marrow. And the red bone marrow, as you know, it produces granulocytes and RBC. So here you have two kind of bones. One is this hard bone. This is present inside the diaphysis part. And one is the spongier cancellous bone. This is the end of the bone. Here, end of the bone is termed as epiphysis. So epiphysis is basically the end of the bone, which contains the spongier cancellous bone. It contains inside the red bone marrow. We know that here and here, if you consider the difference between these two, what exactly you can see here, that here you have the Haversian canal, the concentric lamellae. Here there is no concentric lamellae, there is no Haversian canal, only the trabeculae or the bar-like structure is present, which contains in between the red bone marrow, which forms the RBC. Now, as you all know, we started with the bone, saying that bone is a hard, mesodermal, rigid, connective tissue. Now, we will see the role of the hormones inside. You have in your NCERT a disease called osteoporosis. With respect to the hormone estrogen, we will study there. It is mentioned in NCERT 11th class. Then you have in hormones, thyroid hormones, calcitonin is there, which has to do with parathyroid hormone, has to do with the bone. So let us study these 4 or 5 hormones which play a significant role here in the bone formation. But before that, I must tell you that the bone forming cells, osteoblasts, which are forming the osteocytes, also gets converted, or a kind of macrophage or a kind of cells which is actually the osteoclast cells. Osteoclast cells are present inside the bone. What is the function of the osteoclast? The osteoclast is basically the bone cells, which actually is responsible for bone reabsorption. Bone reabsorption. We will explain this. Bone reabsorption means what? So we will discuss the bone reabsorption here with respect to this osteoclast and with respect to the hormones given in your NCERT. So let us start with the hormones which are there. Say parathyroid, parathormone. This is one hormone which you have to study. Then there is another hormone called calcitonin. Then there is another hormone which has to do with it is the glucocorticoids, which is a steroid hormone from adrenal gland. Glucocorticoids. Then you have estrogen. All these 4 hormones, we will see what actually the role they play in the bone formation. So let us begin with the parathormone. The parathormone in your NCERT, it's written the hypercalcemic hormone. 10 milligram per 100 ml in your blood. This calcium, normal level of calcium is present. Now, this hormone, parathormone, which is secreted from the parathyroid hormone, present on the thyroid lobes, 2 on each side. Let us make it. This is, for example, the thyroid. On the thyroid, there is, on the back side of this, these are parathyroid. This parathyroid secretes a hormone called parathormone, which is an 84 amino acid hormone. Now, this calcitonin is secreted from the thyroid itself. Now, the thyroid gland has lobes or follicles. If you look at the structure of the follicles, you will find 5 minutes. Follicles are there. The follicles basically is made up of cells which actually stores the thyroxine hormone. But in between these follicles, you find there are endocrine cells known as C cells. These C cells are responsible for the secretion of the calcitonin. So that is how it got its name, C cells. Now the C cell secretes calcitonin. So you understand that this is an 84 amino acid hormone, peptide hormone. This is also a 32 amino acid hormone. This is an steroid hormone from adrenal cortex. A steroid hormone, you know, the estrogen, the female hormone, and it's an steroid hormone derived from the cholesterol. Now, what role they play in the bone formation? And there are diseases, we will discuss it: osteoporosis, osteomalacia, rickets, Paget disease, etc. with the bone. So what exactly these two hormones, along with the vitamin D, if you want to consider vitamin D also play an important role here. So let us first make an understanding. Everything, you do not go by mugging this. You have to understand the concept behind. The concept is that in this bone, from the bone, the calcium is taken by the osteoclastic activity. The calcium and phosphates are solubilized. That is called bone reabsorption. Now you understand bone reabsorption. The osteoclast cells basically demineralize the bone. Basically, the blood vessels, here is the blood vessel, the calcium goes inside the blood vessel, the phosphate goes inside. So actually, what exactly is happening, that the calcium and phosphate level is increasing inside. That is how it bears the name, hypercalcemic hormone. It increases the calcium concentration. Besides, from intestine also, the calcium is absorbed, the phosphate is absorbed. From the nephron also, the calcium is absorbed. So on all the cases, you can find that the calcium concentration is being increased by this hormone, parathormone. Parathormone increases osteoclastic activity in the bone, thereby the bone loses its calcium, and inside the blood vessels, the calcium concentration increases. The phosphate decreases because it allows the phosphate to be excreted from the nephron. So in short, what we write is the calcium concentration increases, the phosphate concentration being decreased with respect to parathormone. So the osteoclast, one cell which is responsible for the reabsorption. Now you understand, here is an absorption, here is a reabsorption. That is, osteoclast cells basically demineralizes the calcium and the phosphate, and the calcium level inside your blood increases. The calcitonin is one hormone now which basically opposes parathormone. It decreases the calcium level, it decreases the phosphate level. So one is hypercalcemic, the another is hypocalcemic. In terms of phosphate also, hypophosphatemic, and here's a hypophosphatemic. It decreases the phosphate level, it decreases the calcium. So absorption closed, absorption closed, absorption closed. From nowhere the calcium comes, and thereby the concentration level decreases, the calcium excretion and phosphate excretion increases. This is the role the calcitonin plays. You must be very clear about this because this is in your syllabus. The parathormone increases the calcium level by stimulating the osteoclastic activity, whereas the calcitonin inhibits osteoclastic. So one is basically increasing or stimulating osteoclastic activity. Osteoclastic activity is increased here. Activity, in this case, increased, in this case, decreased. Now, let us say estrogen. What happens if all the calcium from the bone, the phosphate, gets out? This is one question. If all the calcium gets out, you may ask the question, why the calcium and the phosphate are taken out? You understand that the bone at the same time, absorbs the calcium from the blood for the restructuring, remodeling the bone. So restructuring and remodeling takes place. So as the estrogen in female, just winding it up. Estrogen is the female hormone. So what it causes is it also causes the inhibition of osteoclastic activity. So as long as a female does not undergo, in menopause, the bone density remains okay. But as soon as she gets into the menopause, what happens, that the estrogen is no more, there is no inhibition, so a female basically suffers from osteoporosis. So osteoporosis is the term here, which is for the demineralization. It is due to the excess activity of the osteoclast. Hope you understood. Thank you.